You know that feeling when a game ends and you just sit there, credits rolling, controller in your lap, wondering what the hell just happened to you? That's what separates a good JRPG from a legendary one. Not the combat system, not the graphics, it's the story that refuses to leave your head. Most JRPGs give you the same tired formula. Chosen one, ancient evil, save the world, roll credits. But the games we're talking about today, they don't play by those rules. These are the ones that made you question reality at 3 a.m. The ones where you ugly cried and weren't even embarrassed about it. The stories that genuinely changed how you think about games. Today, we're counting down 20 JRPGs that will live rent-free in your brain forever. Some are obvious, some you've probably never heard of, but every single one does something unforgettable. Let's get into it.
We have to start with Xenogears. This game is a beautiful, broken mess, and that's exactly why it's perfect. The first disc is your standard JRPG epic. Mechs, politics, a revenge quest. But then you hit disc 2, and suddenly the game runs out of budget and just narrates massive story beats at you while characters sit in chairs. It's janky as hell, but here's the thing. The fact that a game this unfinished is still considered one of the greatest stories ever told, that should tell you something. Xenogears doesn't just tell you a story. It buries you in Jungian psychology, Gnostic mysticism, reincarnation cycles, and religious allegory. Faye isn't just fighting a villain, he's fighting his own fractured psyche, his past lives, and a god that created humanity as spare parts for its resurrection. This game asks massive questions about identity, free will, and whether love can break the cycle of eternal suffering. And yeah, the second half is rough from a gameplay standpoint, but narratively, it goes places most games wouldn't even attempt. Xenogears is ambitious to a fault, and that ambition is exactly what makes it unforgettable.
Number 2. Final Fantasy VI. If Xenogears is about the self, Final Fantasy VI is about the collective, and it's one of the rare JRPGs that actually lets the villain win halfway through. Kefka doesn't just threaten the world, he destroys it. The world of ruin is what happens when you fail, and the second half isn't about saving the world anymore. It's about finding a reason to keep going when everything's already fallen apart. What makes 6 special is its ensemble cast. You've got 14 playable characters, and somehow the game makes you care about every single one of them. Terra's searching for her humanity, Celeste is dealing with survivor's guilt, Scion's mourning his family. This isn't just a party of heroes, it's a group of broken people trying to hold it together, and the game respects that. The world of ruin is a meditation on depression and grief, where gathering your friends isn't about building an army, it's about not being alone. And then there's Kefka. He's not sympathetic, he's not morally gray, he's pure nihilistic chaos, and that's what makes him terrifying. He's the destruction of meaning itself, which gives the hero's struggle actual weight. Also, the opera scene, still one of the most iconic moments in JRPG history, and it didn't need voice acting to make you feel something.
Number 3. Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X is a tragedy disguised as a pilgrimage, and it's one of the most emotionally devastating games in the series. On the surface, it's about Yuna's journey to defeat sin and bring peace to Spira. But the real story is about a religion built on lies, a cycle of death that no one questions, and 2 people falling in love knowing one of them has to die. What's brilliant about FF10 is how it uses Tidus as an outsider to question everything. He's the player's proxy. He doesn't understand Spira's traditions, so when he asks, "Why do people accept this?" you're asking the same thing. And the slow reveal that Yuna's pilgrimage is a suicide mission, that the final Aeon becomes the next sin, that the entire religion is a control system, it reframes the whole journey. This isn't just a story about defeating evil, it's about the younger generation realizing their elders' traditions are built on suffering. And that ending, Tidus isn't even real. He's a dream of the faith, and when you break the cycle, he has to disappear. It's not just sad, it's bittersweet in the best way. He sacrifices himself to save a world he doesn't even belong to, and the game earns every tear. FF10 is a masterclass in building toward an emotional payoff, and it still holds up today.
Number 4. Final Fantasy Tactics. If you want political intrigue in a JRPG, Tactics is the gold standard. This isn't about saving the world from a meteor. It's about class warfare, religious corruption, and two childhood friends torn apart by the systems they're trying to change. Ramza and Delita start in the same place, but the story watches them drift into completely different ideologies, and it never tells you which one is right. What makes Tactics so mature is how it handles history. The game is framed as a historian uncovering the truth of the War of the Lions, and what you discover is that the hero the world remembers, Delita, isn't the real hero. Ramza saves the kingdom, but he's branded a heretic and erased from history. It's cynical, it's realistic, and it's one of the boldest narrative choices in the genre. The game is literally about how history is written by the victors, and it's not afraid to show you how unfair that is. The writing is dense, almost Shakespearean, and the game trusts you to keep up. Betrayals, assassinations, and morally gray characters are everywhere, and very few people are purely good or evil. It's a story about people making impossible choices in a broken system, and it still feels relevant decades later. Number 5. NieR Automata. NieR Automata is the kind of game that makes you question why you even play video games in the first place. It starts as a stylish action RPG about androids fighting machines, but that's just the surface. The real story is hidden in multiple playthroughs, shifting perspectives, and a structure that constantly recontextualizes everything you thought you understood. The central irony is brutal. 2B, 9S, and A2 are fighting for the glory of humanity, but humanity's already extinct. They're trapped in a cycle of violence for a cause that doesn't exist anymore, and the game forces you to confront that emptiness. What does it mean to have purpose when the reason you exist is gone? Can you create meaning in a world built on lies? And then there's ending E. You're fighting the credits, literally the developers, in an impossible bullet hell sequence, and when you can't win, other players' save data shows up to help you. And after you finally beat it, the game gives you the option to delete your save file to help other players. It's not required, but the choice itself is part of the message. It's one of the most powerful examples of ludonarrative harmony I've ever seen. NieR Automata doesn't just have a great story, it uses the medium of video games to tell a story no other medium could.
Number 6. 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim. If you thought time travel stories were confusing, 13 Sentinels takes that complexity and cranks it to 11. You've got 13 protagonists, giant mechs, time loops, alien invasions, and somehow, it all comes together into one of the most intricately plotted stories in gaming. Vanillaware didn't just write a sci-fi mystery, they wrote a narrative puzzle where every piece matters. The genius is in the structure. You don't experience the story linearly. You jump between characters, timelines, and perspectives, and each one reveals a new piece of the puzzle. Early on, it feels chaotic, but the further you go, the more you realize how meticulously everything is planned. A throwaway line from one character becomes a massive reveal later. A scene you watched from one perspective suddenly means something completely different when you see it from another. But what makes it truly special is how grounded the characters are. These aren't heroes, they're confused teenagers trying to figure out what's real. The sci-fi concepts get wild, but the emotional core is always about identity, memory, and the fear of losing yourself. And when all 13 storylines finally converge, you realize you've been watching one massive, interconnected story the entire time. 13 Sentinels is a narrative achievement, and it's one of those games you'll want to replay immediately just to see how all the pieces fit.
7. Mother 3. Mother 3 is a pastoral tragedy wrapped in a bright, colorful art style, and it's one of the most emotionally devastating games Nintendo has ever made, which is
probably why they never officially localized it. The story starts in the Nowhere Islands, a peaceful village where money doesn't exist and everyone shares everything. Then Porky shows up, introduces capitalism, and slowly corrupts the entire village into a consumerist nightmare. It's not subtle. What makes Mother 3 so powerful is how personal it is. This isn't about saving the world from an abstract evil. It's about Lucas losing his family. His mother is killed, his brother goes missing, and his father becomes a shell of himself. The final confrontation isn't a triumphant battle. It's Lucas fighting his brainwashed twin brother, and it ends with the literal destruction of the world. There's no happy ending here, just the quiet understanding that grief doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it. The game's anti-capitalist themes are impossible to ignore. The introduction of money, happiness boxes, or TVs, and industrialization directly parallel the village's moral decay. It's a story about how greed destroys community, and it's told with a sincerity that makes it hit even harder. Mother 3 is a modern fable disguised as a quirky RPG, and if you can make it through without crying, you're stronger than me.
Number 8. Lost Odyssey. Lost Odyssey is Hironobu Sakaguchi's love letter to classic Final Fantasy, and it's one of the most emotionally mature JRPGs ever made. The story follows Kaim, an immortal who's lived for 1,000 years but can't remember most of it. The main plot is standard fare: save the world, stop the bad guy. But the real heart of the game is in the 1,000 Years of Dreams. These are short, text-based stories written by award-winning novelist Kiyoshi Shigematsu, and they're some of the most beautiful, heartbreaking pieces of writing you'll find in a video game. They're triggered when Kaim encounters something that sparks a memory, a song, a smell, a place, and you're transported to a moment from his past. Some are tragic, some are bittersweet, and all of them explore what it means to live forever while everyone you love dies. The story Hannah's Departure is a perfect example. It's about Kaim raising a mortal daughter, watching her grow old and having to say goodbye. It's gut-wrenching, and it's told entirely through text. No voice acting, no cutscenes, just words. And it works because the writing is that good. Lost Odyssey proves that you don't need flashy CGI to tell an emotional story. Sometimes all you need is great writing and the space to let it breathe.
Number 9. Dragon Quest V. Dragon Quest V does something most JRPGs don't even attempt. It spans an entire human lifetime. You start as a child traveling with your father, get enslaved as a teenager, escape and get married, and eventually fight alongside your own children. It's not about being the chosen one. In fact, the legendary hero isn't even you. It's your son. You're just the father who raised him. That shift in perspective is what makes DQ5 so special. This isn't a power fantasy. It's a story about legacy, fatherhood, and passing the torch to the next generation. And the marriage choice? That's one of the most debated topics in the fandom because it actually matters. Bianca, NieR, or Deborah, whoever you choose affects your kid's hair color, party dynamics, and even certain story beats. It makes the game feel deeply personal. What's wild is that this game came out in 1992, and it already had monster recruitment mechanics that would later inspire Pokémon. But more importantly, it understood that the most compelling JRPG stories aren't always about saving the world. They're about the people you love and the sacrifices you make for them. Dragon Quest V is a coming-of-age story in the truest sense, and it's one of the most emotionally resonant games in the series.
Number 10. Suikoden 2. Suikoden 2 is a war story, but it's not about glory or heroism. It's about two childhood friends forced onto opposite sides of a conflict and the slow, painful destruction of their bond. You play as a silent protagonist swept into a rebellion, and your best friend Joey ends up leading the enemy army. What makes it tragic is that neither of them is wrong. They're both trying to save people, just in different ways. The game's brilliance is in how it humanizes war.
You recruit 108 stars of destiny to build your army, but they're not faceless soldiers. They're cooks, blacksmiths, musicians, and broken warriors, each with their own story. The base building mechanic makes you care about these people, so when war breaks out, every loss feels personal. And the game doesn't shy away from showing the ugliness of conflict. Villages burn, civilians die, and decisions you make have real consequences. And then there's Luca Blight. He's one of the most terrifying villains in JRPG history, not because he's sympathetic, but because he's pure, unapologetic cruelty. The battle to kill him is legendary. It takes 3 full parties of 6 characters each just to take him down, and even then, he fights to the bitter end. Suikoden 2 is a masterclass in political storytelling, and it's one of the most emotionally devastating RPGs ever made.
Number 11. Persona 5 Royal. Persona 5 Royal is about rebellion, but not the flashy, surface-level kind. It's about what happens when you're crushed by a system that doesn't care about you, and how you find the strength to push back. The Phantom Thieves aren't fighting a demon king, they're fighting corrupt adults who exploit, abuse, and manipulate people, and the game makes it clear that this is personal. Every palace represents a distorted heart, a person who's twisted the world around them to justify their cruelty. And the brilliance of P5 is that it doesn't just tell you these people are bad, it makes you see the victims. The students abused by a teacher, the artist exploited by his mentor, the politician using people as stepping stones. It's grounded in real-world pain, and that's why it hits so hard. But Royal takes it even further with the 3rd semester. Dr. Maruki creates a reality where no one suffers. Everyone gets their perfect life. And the game asks you, is it worth it? Is happiness worth giving up your free will? It's a genuinely difficult choice, and the fact that the game respects your intelligence enough to present both sides fairly is what makes it special. Persona 5 Royal isn't just about fighting the system, it's about deciding what kind of world you want to live in, even if that world is imperfect.
12. Trails in the Sky SC. Trails in the Sky SC is the culmination of one of the slowest burns in JRPG history, and it's worth every single hour. The first game, FC, sets up the world of Labelle, introduces you to Estelle and Joshua, and just when you think you've got it figured out, it rips your heart out. SC picks up immediately after that cliffhanger, and it's all about Estelle's growth from a naive girl into one of the strongest protagonists in the genre. What makes Trails special isn't the big plot twists, though there are plenty, it's the detail. Every NPC has a name, a life, and their dialogue changes after every major story beat. You're not just saving the world, you're saving these people, and the game makes sure you know them. It's the kind of world building that makes you want to talk to every single character just to see how they're doing. And Estelle, she's incredible. In a genre full of passive heroines, she's the one driving the story forward. Her refusal to give up on Joshua isn't portrayed as weakness, it's her greatest strength. The relationship between the two of them is the emotional core of the game, and by the time you reach the ending, you've earned every moment of it. Trails in the Sky SC is a character study disguised as an epic, and it's one of the best written JRPGs ever made.
Number 13. Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is the JRPG that respects your time, and that alone makes it special. Most players finish it in 25-30 hours. It has zero filler, and every single scene either advances the plot or develops the characters. You're not grinding for hours or running through empty dungeons. You're constantly moving forward, and it never wastes a second. The time travel mechanic is what makes the story work. You're not just visiting different eras, you're seeing the consequences of your actions across time. Plant a tree in the past, and it's a forest in the future. Save a village in the Dark Ages, and it thrives centuries later.
The game makes cause and effect tangible, and it's incredibly satisfying to see how your choices ripple through history. But what makes Chrono Trigger timeless is its characters. Chrono, Marl, Luca, Frog, Robo, Ayla, Magus, every single one of them is memorable, and the game develops them without ever feeling like it's padding the runtime. And the multiple endings? They're not just throwaway gags. Okay, some of them are. But the true ending is one of the most satisfying conclusions in gaming. Chrono Trigger is a masterclass in pacing, and it's proof that you don't need 100 hours to tell a great story.
Number 14, Xenoblade Chronicles. Xenoblade Chronicles is set on the corpses of two dead gods, and that's just the setup. The game starts with a war between humans and machines, but the further you go, the more you realize the entire world is a lie. The twist isn't just a plot reveal, it completely recontextualizes everything you thought you knew, and it's one of the most jaw-dropping moments in JRPG history. What makes Xenoblade special is how it balances spectacle with intimacy. Yes, you're fighting to break the cycle of fate and kill a god, but you're also watching Shulk grapple with revenge, loss, and the weight of the Monado's visions. The game constantly asks, if you can see the future, are you obligated to change it? And what if changing it makes things worse? The world itself is a character. Exploring the Bionis and Mechanus feels like walking through the anatomy of something ancient and unknowable, and the sense of scale is breathtaking. But it's the smaller moments, the party banter, the side quests that flesh out the world, the relationships you build, that make the big moments hit even harder. Xenoblade Chronicles is an epic in every sense of the word, and it's one of the best JRPG stories of the last 15 years.
15. Yakuza Like a Dragon. Yakuza Like a Dragon is the story of a man who loses everything, and it's told with more heart than you'd ever expect from a series about organized crime. Ichiban Kasuga takes the fall for his patriarch, spends 18 years in prison, and when he gets out, the man he sacrificed everything for tries to kill him. It's a betrayal so complete that it would break most people. But Ichiban, he just keeps getting back up. What makes Ichiban special is his optimism. He's a 42-year-old ex-con who sees the world through the lens of Dragon Quest because that's how he copes. His party isn't made up of warriors and mages. It's a homeless man, a disgraced cop, and a hostess. They're society's rejects, and the game treats them with dignity and humanity. It's not a power fantasy. It's a story about finding family when you've lost everything. The turn-based combat is a love letter to classic JRPGs, and the fact that it came from a series known for brawling combat is insane. But it works because the game commits to the bit. Ichiban genuinely believes he's in a JRPG, and that sincerity is infectious. By the end, you're not just rooting for him to win, you're rooting for him to survive. Yakuza Like a Dragon is one of the most heartfelt games in the series, and it's a perfect entry point for newcomers. Number 16 is Persona 4 Golden. Persona 4 Golden is a murder mystery wrapped in a small-town slice of life, and it's one of the most uplifting JRPGs ever made. You move to the rural town of Inaba for a year, and just as you're settling in, people start dying. The twist? The killer is using a world inside the TV to murder people, and you and your friends can enter that world to save them. What makes P4 so brilliant is its central theme, truth. Every dungeon represents someone's distorted self-perception, their shadow, and to save them, you have to force them to confront the parts of themselves they've been hiding. It's a story about self-acceptance, and it's told with a warmth and sincerity that's rare in the genre. The game doesn't just tell you to accept yourself, it shows you what that looks like through every character's arc. And the cast? There's some of the most lovable characters in any JRPG. Yosuke, Chi, Yukiko, Kanji, Rise, Naoto, every single one of them feels like a real friend, and by the end of the game, you don't want to leave Inaba. The true ending is a gut punch in the best way,
and it's the kind of conclusion that makes you sit back and think about everything you just experienced. Persona 4 Golden is comfort food for the soul, and it's impossible not to love.
17. Tales of Berseria. Tales of Berseria is the darkest game in the Tales series, and it's not afraid to make you uncomfortable. Velvet Crow isn't a hero. She's a woman consumed by rage, grief, and the need for revenge. Her brother was sacrificed, she was turned into a demon, and the person responsible is now the world's savior. So she sets out to burn it all down. What makes Berseria so compelling is that it doesn't apologize for Velvet. She's not a good person, and the game knows it. But her anger is justified, and as you travel with her, you start to understand why she's doing what she's doing. The rest of the party is just as broken. Rokaru, Laphicet, Aizen, Magalu, they're all damaged people with their own reasons for following her, and the game takes the time to develop them into fully realized characters. The story doesn't pull punches. It deals with loss, trauma, and the cost of revenge in a way that's rare for the series. And by the end, you realize that Velvet's journey was never about saving the world, it was about finding a reason to keep living. Tales of Berseria is a tragedy, but it's also a story about healing, and it's one of the best written games in the franchise.
Number 18. Fire Emblem Three Houses. Fire Emblem Three Houses starts as a school simulator and ends as a war tragedy, and the shift is devastating. You're a professor at Garreg Mach Monastery, teaching one of three houses, the Black Eagles, Blue Lions, or Golden Deer. And for the first half of the game, everything feels safe. You're building bonds, training students, and watching them grow. And then, the time skip happens. 5 years pass, war breaks out, and suddenly your former students are on opposite sides of the battlefield. That sweet girl you taught? She's now an enemy general, and you might have to kill her. The game doesn't shy away from the consequences of your choice, and it forces you to live with them. What makes Three Houses so special is that there are no clear villains. Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude all have valid reasons for fighting, and the route you choose completely changes your perspective on the war. Every house gives you a third of the story, and you need to play all of them to understand the full picture. It's a masterclass in moral ambiguity, and it's one of the most emotionally devastating games Nintendo has ever made. By the end, you're not just fighting for your house, you're fighting for the people you couldn't save.
Number 19. Metaphor ReFantasia. Metaphor ReFantasia takes the Persona formula and transplants it into a dark fantasy world, and the result is one of the most thematically rich JRPGs in years. The story kicks off with the king's assassination and a contest to determine the next ruler. Anyone can compete, but you're from the Elda tribe, a group reviled for practicing heretical magic. You're not just fighting for the throne, you're fighting against centuries of prejudice. What makes Metaphor so mature is how it handles systemic oppression. It's not just background lore, it's woven into the gameplay. Propaganda, fear-mongering, and manipulation are mechanics you have to navigate as you build support for your campaign. The game doesn't shy away from showing the ugliness of politics, and it constantly asks, what kind of world do you want to create? The combat is a genius hybrid system. Weak enemies can be dispatched in real time, but stronger foes trigger turn-based battles. It keeps the pacing tight while preserving the tactical depth Atlas is known for. And the archetype system? It's the job system taken to the next level, letting you switch between classes mid-combo for insane customization. Metaphor isn't just a fantasy persona. It's a game that uses its setting to explore power, identity, and the cost of change. It's bold, it's beautiful, and it's one of the smartest JRPGs in years.
Number 20. Tactics Ogre Reborn. Tactics Ogre Reborn is the game that invented the political tactical RPG, and it's still one of the most brutal war stories in gaming. You play as Denim, a young man whose people have been oppressed and slaughtered, and what starts as a quest for revenge spirals into a nationwide conflict. But here's the thing, there are no good choices. Every decision you make has devastating consequences, and the game never lets you forget it. The branching paths are what make it special. Early on, the game will ask you, are you willing to slaughter innocent people to achieve a strategic victory? And there's no right answer. Choose one path, and you'll spend the rest of the game living with that guilt. Choose the other, and you'll watch people you care about die. It's brutal, it's unforgiving, and it's one of the most morally complex stories in the genre. The Reborn version adds voice acting to every cutscene, and it makes the already dense Shakespearean dialogue hit even harder. The Chariot Tarot system lets you rewind turns, which doesn't make the game easy, it just makes the difficulty feel fair. Tactics Ogre isn't a power fantasy. It's a cautionary tale about how war corrupts even the most noble ideals, and it's one of the most essential JRPGs ever made.
So there you have it. 20 JRPGs with stories you'll never forget. Some of them are obvious picks, some are deeper cuts, but every single one of them does something special. They're the games that stick with you, the ones you think about years later, the ones that remind you why you fell in love with JRPGs in the first place. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Drop a comment and let me know which of these hit you the hardest, or if there's a game I missed that deserves to be on this list. And if you haven't played some of these, do yourself a favor and fix that. Trust me, you won't regret it.